a Uruguayan Air Force plane. On October 13, 1972, a Uruguayan Air Force plane carrying 45 people crashed high in the Andes Mountains. On board were members of a Uruguayan rugby team, along with their friends and family, traveling to Chile for a match. The crash itself was devastating. The plane struck a mountain peak and split apart, scattering survivors across the freezing snow. Of the 45 passengers, 12 died instantly, and more perished from injuries and exposure in the days that followed. Those who remained were stranded at an altitude of over 11,000 feet, with no food, no heat, and no way to contact the outside world. At first, the survivors clung to hope that rescuers would find them. But after more than a week in the mountains, they heard devastating news on a small radio. The search had been called off. The world believed they were dead. Trapped in temperatures that dropped far below freezing, with nothing but the wreckage of the plane for shelter, the group faced an unthinkable choice. With no food left and no vegetation or wildlife in sight, they turned to the bodies of their deceased friends, who had been preserved in the ice. For 72 days, they endured starvation, frostbite, avalanches, and the psychological torment of their desperate decision to eat human flesh in order to survive. Finally, in December, after weeks of planning, two of the survivors, Fernando Parado and Roberto Canessa, set out on foot. They trekked for 10 days across nearly 40 miles of treacherous mountain terrain until they found help. Rescue teams soon returned to the crash site and saved the remaining 14 survivors. In the end, only 16 of the original 45 passengers lived through the ordeal. Their story shocked the world, not only for their unimaginable suffering, but also for the lengths to which the human spirit will go in order to survive. The 1993 film Alive, starring Ethan Hawke, brought this harrowing event to the screen. While the movie captures the physical endurance of the survivors, the reality was even more brutal than what was shown. To this day, the Andes plane crash is remembered as one of the most extraordinary and controversial survival stories in history. Aron Ralston. On April 26, 2003, a 27-year-old mountaineer named Aron Ralston set out alone on a hiking trip in Utah's Canyonlands National Park. An experienced outdoorsman, he planned a day of canyoneering through a remote area known as Blue John Canyon. But Aron made a crucial mistake. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. Deep inside the narrow slot canyon, he climbed down a gap between boulders. Suddenly, one of the massive rocks shifted. It crashed down and pinned his right arm against the canyon wall. In a matter of seconds, Aron found himself completely trapped, alone, miles from help. For the next 5 days, he tried everything to escape. He tugged and pulled with all his strength, but the 800-pound boulder wouldn't budge. He attempted to chip away at the rock with his pocket knife, but it barely made a scratch. He rationed his water, sipped from his small supply, and eventually drank his own urine just to stay alive. Using his video camera, Aron recorded final messages for his family, convinced he would never make it out. He even carved his name, his birth date, and the expected date of his death into the canyon wall. On the 6th day, delirious from dehydration and exhaustion, he made a desperate decision. With a cheap multi-tool, Aron began to amputate his own arm. The blade was too dull to cut through bone, so he used the rock itself to snap the bones in his forearm. Then, with the pocket knife, he cut through the remaining tissue. After over an hour of unimaginable pain, Aron was finally free. Weak and bleeding, he rappelled down a 65-foot drop and hiked nearly 7 miles until he encountered a family who rushed to call for help. Against all odds, Aron Ralston survived. His incredible story became the subject of the 2010 film 127 Hours, starring James Franco. The movie was praised for its raw accuracy, with Aron himself serving as a consultant to ensure the harrowing details were authentic. From isolation and hallucinations to the amputation scene, almost everything was shown exactly as it happened. Aron's ordeal remains one of the most remarkable survival stories ever told. He turned a moment of tragedy into a lesson about the value of life and human connection. His memoir, Between a Rock and a Hard Place, inspired millions, and his story continues to be a reminder of just how powerful the human will to survive can be.